and gentlemen. My name is Rob Potter. I'm the host of the Victory Light Radio Show. I'd like to thank you for coming to my website, thepromiserevealed.com, to hear this special edition of the Victory Light Radio Show on the Pyramid One Network. I'd like to thank Bob Charles above the equator, and of course the ever-talented John Allen at Pyramid One Network down under, holding down the fort and broadcasting in the Southern Hemisphere for the Pyramid One Network. And you can, that's where these Cobra interviews end up, as well as on my webpage under the radio section. As always, I have to thank Danelle Glade for fine transcription, Mr. Sam Ritchie for his talented editing in English of these interviews, and especially this month, Mr. Ricky Serapico, who's had an extremely tough time. We did have some modulation problems with the internet warble, so Cobra's interview with sound modulation may be extremely trying this month. Ricky, I know, is going to pull a rabbit out of the hat as always and clean things up and make it sound good. So if it's a little rough this month and you have to go to transcript mode, hope you'll understand it wasn't Cobra's fault, my fault, or Ricky's fault. It's just a warble in the internet connection. We have reestablished it 3 or 4 times when it got too bad and we actually dropped. So please realize the magic that Ricky does, and any support you can lend to him and his beautiful music, and of course to the Prepare for Change group, and through supporting Cobra's work and my work, we do appreciate it. Very grateful for that. I'd like to make a couple announcements. I will be interviewing Corey Goody T. Spoke with him today after his article came out. Really good brother, very honest, sincere, and I believe he is faithfully reporting his experiences. After talking to him and Cobra, Corey says he can't verify certain aspects of Cobra's information, and Cobra can't verify certain aspects of Corey's information through his contacts, just showing you that some of the higher up elites in the Earth Ground Crew Forces of Liberation are themselves compartmentalized, including Alex Collier, who has some different information from Cobra. And this does make it more difficult for us, but we have to rely on our inner voice of truth here and make a discernment as to the nature of this stuff. Corey is being attacked now heavily. There's a disinformation campaign coming out. We spoke about that a little bit today. That's part of the program of being in the position of a whistleblower. And I was happy to hear that Corey's family situation has become a little more safety-oriented, protecting him and his wife and his beautiful children while he goes through this process of upsetting the forces and the powers that be. So that will be coming out after the second interview. I'll be interviewing him, and we'll get that up as soon as possible. Probably not this next Thursday, maybe the Thursday afterwards it'll come out, but you can look forward to that. The reason I'm mentioning that on this Cobra interview is Cobra had requested that we do an interview with him and Corey at the same time, and very happy I was able to make the way clear there, and Corey has agreed to do that. I haven't received information from Cobra, but I presume we're going to get that up pretty soon, and this will allow them to ask questions of each other, and I'll ask questions and kind of act as a moderator for that. I know you're all going to enjoy that information. I also would like to share that David Wilcock and Corey, we're talking about the pineal and pituitary gland as being important, and the government secret SSP, I guess we call it, groups, and the My Lab part of the technology is to develop the pineal and pituitary gland. And David Wilcock did mention in Tibet from the book Doctor from Lhasa, in Lobsang Rampa's book, we do hear about the technique of utilizing a small piece of wood or bone to make a small incision into the brain and to actually stimulate the pineal gland to create psychic abilities. The more natural way, of course, is to develop oneself through the science of Kriya Yoga. When the master Mahavatar Babaji trained me in the science of Kriya Yoga, he actually turned his eyes and looked directly into his pineal gland. So energy follows thought, and when your eyes and your awareness look into your pineal gland and you connect from the deep energy of the earth to the heavens through your crown chakra, there's a unified field there that will expand your torsion field as you enter into the silence in a sacred communion with the divine, what I call the Holy Spirit. So the science of Kriya Yoga has always been there, but we also have advanced technologies utilizing tachyon crystals, Sintamani stones, zero-point technology such as the gem sphere. And of course, some of my favorites have always been crystals and lasers. I do sell them on my website with a stand. You put one up next to your bedstand, get yourself a taconized crystal, lay the laser beam down on the pillow, align your third eye and your crown chakra to shoot into a laser beam into a crystal, a taconized crystal, and that is going to accelerate photonic energy fields and natural energies. And when David and Corey were talking about the earth energies, that's what the Akashic records are. That's what the mineral kingdom is. And these stones take 30 or 40 million years to grow. Quartz crystals are, on the average at least 20 million years old. Diamonds are 50 million. So that contains a lot of information and history that's gone on the planet in the Akashic records. And those records are released vibrationally into the ambient field of your own Merkaba or life force field, your masculine feminine vortex or torsion fields as it's called, through vibrational resonance. And the way this works, folks, is you do have endocrine glands. These are the first units of biochemistry that, or they produce hormones, which is the first unit of biochemistry that possesses consciousness. So you actually have 7 different endocrine glands and 7 different levels of feelings and 7 different chakras or force centers at etheric levels. And when these are stimulated by a balanced natural field, you can get balanced hormones and balanced feelings and help you unify the bicameral mind into the intuitional higher self through the rainbow bridgehead. Some of those are some esoteric words I'm saying there, but for those of you who look up the higher self, the Alta Major Center, and the upper triad of the chakras and do your own research on Kriya Yoga, you'll see the soundness of these natural developmental tools to counter effect some of the negative technologies that we know are kind of dampening our human fields. The onus is on us. No more armchair critics sitting around and complaining about who's not doing what. It's up to us to prepare the way, to have plans ready, to be peaceful and nonviolent, and to move forward. So I'm going to ask you all to do your best to listen carefully here to this interview from our emissary of light, Cobra, who cuts to the chase, has his own viewpoint, a lot of information about the transparent liberation of the planet and what we're going through. And we can look forward to these interviews. And again, thanks to all the people that made this possible, for you for listening, for the kind words of support we received from so many of you. And do keep an eye out. I mentioned that we do have some more Sintamani stones. They'll be out very soon. Keep it on my website. Thank you so very much. And victory to the light. Here comes Mr. Cobra.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now straight to the Cobra interview. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be with my friend and emissary of light, Cobra. Lots of things, as usual, taking place in the world. Things are escalating, as I have predicted. They're going to get even more wild on the spin zone, as some people call it, in the government disinformation program. And now more than ever, discernment is required. And I always do appreciate Cobra's dispassionate, very calm demeanor and non-reactive information that he's giving. And so once again, it's an honor to welcome you to the show, Cobra. Thanks for coming on again.
Thank you again for your invitation. It was a pleasure to do interviews with you.
All right. Well, I hope things are going well over there, wherever you are in the world, in China, Africa, or whatever. But I'd like to start off, speaking of disinformation, you were attacked a little bit this week on the Agarthan website. A lot of people asked me about it, and, the usual hair on fire. Oh, my God, what is this? What do you think? And I finally looked at the interview. And I have to say, I looked at it, it made a lot of conclusions and judgments as if you support everything in BRICS, as though you're part of the IMF or the United Nations agenda. It was completely ridiculous. I just interviewed with the Red Dragon ambassador and my friend Louisa and that team there. And they were pretty positive in understanding about that. They were kind of concerned, what's going on, as a lot of people were. But as far as I'm concerned, they didn't have any evidence. They were making a lot of prognostications about you. I don't want you to comment, so much on that, but this type of thing really is increasing, and it seems that there's a lot of people with a certain amount of information, and then they seem to jump off a path of following, and they want to attack others. This is going to be increasing, isn't it?
Okay, the situation is that many people are starting to spread information from their understanding, and they have not done work on themselves. They have not transformed their inner shadow. And when they begin to do something like this, when they begin to expose themselves, this kind of work, more and more energy flows down and triggers that inner shadow. And instead of working on themselves, they tend to project to some other people. And also the non-physical entities that are still present to a certain degree on the plasma plane are triggering those kinds of attacks, because this is one of the most effective ways of dividing the positive forces on the surface of the planet. And I'm simply amazed how people easily fall to those tricks. I would say about the estimation of the light forces is that about 50% of the bloggers are susceptible to this kind of manipulation, and they start to attack others. People who are claiming to be, okay, I will put it this way, people who would really be representing a DARPA network would never attack anybody else publicly.
Obviously, I think, as we know, that website was started by someone who was in contact with someone who was in contact with the Agartha network. Since we're going to go there, I have been reading their website. It certainly seems my contact with Luis in South America there and his trips to the Inner Earth and the Agartha network and the Great White Brotherhood were very much indicating that there are different kind of levels of consciousness down there. And I'd kind of like you to give us a little of the landscape. I mean, originally I thought there was two different sides. I thought there was this reptilian and the gray type government, Draco mantoid type thing, tall whites and whatever. And then there was this very positive spiritual network of the Ra, Zara, Yolo, Pasidid, the beneath the Bermuda Triangle, Eastern Order of the Star, the Ra group beneath Luxor and the Giza complex, and of course Ra-Ma in the Himalayas, Ramu in Mount Shasta, and of course many others throughout the world that I wouldn't have a clue of. With your experience, can you give us a little bit of the landscape down there? Not specific locations and stuff, but I'd like to hear about the very positive groups. Were some groups evacuated that couldn't support themselves during the invasions? What's going on down there? This group that's talking about these type of groups looking down on humans as vermin, this doesn't really fit in with my positive Agartha network.
Okay, so you would like to have an overview of the current situation down there, or how it was in the past?
How about a little bit of both?
Okay, generally throughout human history, there was a few main factions down there. There was, of course, the reptilian Draco faction that had strongholds throughout the planet. Actually, those reptilian factions had contact with criminal elements on the surface, and some of those criminal syndicates made their own subterranean networks, especially under larger cities throughout the world, and they were working hand in hand with those reptilians and with the Dracos. Then there were so-called escape groups. Those were people who were escaping from the surface because they didn't like it there, and they went underground. They created their own breakaway civilizations, some of them from ancient Greece, from ancient Egypt, even in Atlantis. When there were drastic changes on the surface, many people went underground, literally, and created their own breakaway civilizations there. And many of those civilizations began to connect with each other, and so the Agartha network was formed. Since the fall of Atlantis, it was growing and growing. It was a loose network of independent structures that was connected to a certain degree, and they had their own unique way of development. And after the Archon invasion in '96, some of those groups cut contact with others for security reasons, and they went in their own different, unique way of expression. Many of those groups were infiltrated after the Archon invasion in '96. There was a lot of fighting going on in those underground. Many people have died, especially in the time frame from '96 to 2001 or 2002. Tens of millions of people died down there. And because of security reasons, those groups cut off contact with the surface. And then, of course, we have the resistance movement. I have spoken about the resistance movement many times. And in the last few years, there were many changes for the better, I would say. The vast majority of the reptilian presence was removed. The only thing that was left until very recently was the Chimera group with their own strongholds. I will be speaking about that at some other time. And there was a very important development late November, early December last year, when there was an official contact made between the resistance movement and the Eastern Agartha network and the Blue Dragon. There was a certain link created, and a certain integration and reunification process have started between various factions that were until then independent. There was a great deal of transformation and even challenge for the Eastern Agartha network because there were mixed elements still present there, and as the contact was made with the resistance, those mixed elements were exposed. So as a result of that transformation, one great part of that Eastern Agartha network is now connected with the resistance movement quite strongly, and some other parts actually cut connection with the rest of the Agartha network and tried to connect with the Cabal. And there were quite many operations at the beginning of this year to fix the situation, and now the situation is much better.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. When you said the breakaway civilizations from Atlantis, this is obviously after the Atlantean cataclysm that took place. Some of these weren't really breaking away. They were basically just surviving in groups and going down with the technology that they could muster to create their own locations, correct?
Some of them actually escaped from the cataclysm, but even before that happened, many groups went down because they didn't like the condition of the surface, because in the late Atlantean period the dark forces grew stronger and stronger, and the majority of the light forces were actually forced, in order to survive intact with full light presence, they had to go underground.
That's kind of like the Telosians from Lemuria had already been building their civilization. In fact, the final cataclysm caught them by surprise. They had planned to have more underground facilities created at that time. So it seems as though there's been obviously these different subterranean cultures have their own, I guess probably because of their isolation, have some of their own cultural viewpoints in regards to universal law and contact. So even amongst them, it seems there's quite a bit of, I guess we could call it variances. Would you agree?
As I have said, the certain very strong unification process has started, and those cultures are keeping their own individual identity, but they are accepting universal law, galactic codex, and universal understanding that is actually present throughout the universe. The basis of unconditional love is the basis of that enlightened society, and those factions are more and more aligning with this. Of course, it is a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but I would say the situation down there in the vast majority of places is much, much better than it was even a year ago, and many of those places are pure light and love already.
Well, that's wonderful news. Also, I'd like a little more explanation when you said the Chinese Agarthan network. Were these individuals from Chinese society that went down some time ago, or are these more recent underground Agarthan networks of the Chinese, what you call the Eastern Alliance, I guess?
The Eastern Agartha network is actually present there for thousands and thousands of years. They were actually connecting with the surface. It was the other way around. They were contacting the surface. They were the ones who were the source of Blue Dragon spirituality, and now they are reconnecting again with Eastern Alliance in a certain way to give guidance in this process of planetary transformation. They are giving guidance for the financial reset and for the formation of the Eastern Alliance on the surface. There is a connection.
Well, that's very good. And to reiterate for some people, when you talk about the resistance, you're talking specifically about the group from Planet X that cleared the Dracos and the Cabal from their planet and petitioned the Confederation to come here and start to help remove this negative force. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. But I would like to add that many people from the Agartha networks have been integrated into the resistance the last 15 years. There was a wave that was integrated in the early 2000s, and there was another wave which is being integrated since late 2014.
I guess when you say integrated, do you mean trained in the process of engaging these hostile forces as nonviolently as possible?
It means that they are integrated in the resistance movement society. It means that they are officially accepted because they match with the vibrational frequency, they match with their goal and their vision and their, I would say, cultural blueprint.
Okay, so I guess I was reading some of the Agarthan website, and they seem to talk about some of these. We spoke about this a little before the show. I'd like you to elaborate a little bit on some of these other groups that are down there that kind of see us as humans, or kind of made it sound like they were gangs with attitudes against humans kind of thing. Is that very prevalent? Are there many of these evolved civilizations that maybe just have a little higher technology and are still looking down on us. Is that very prevalent down there?
Not anymore. There were crime syndicates that were actually working with the surface mafia, with the cabal. They were mixed. Some of them were good, some of them were bad. They were not much more evolved than the surface population. And there were certain groups that broke away from those crime syndicate groups and wanted to be more positive but still mixed. So much of this has been cleared. Some of those people have joined the light. Some of those people were actually removed from below the surface of the planet, teleported to other places, and some of them joined the Confederation, and certain small percentage of them had to go to the Central Sun.
Okay, well that clarifies that a bit. I'm going to be interviewing Corey Good, ET, and I've been listening to some of his stuff lately, trying to prepare myself. As I said before, I think he's sincere, and I believe that I don't necessarily think he has anything he's purposefully misleading us with, but he seems to give, and you have confirmed a lot of his information, he seems to have given quite a clear picture of the extraterrestrial landscape out there as far as the human interaction going on in regards to the fact that there's been different groups going up there and all of this type of thing. Can you comment as to the accuracy of most of his information from your perspective, not as a final answer, of course, but from your perspective and your information, is most of his information regarding the space fleets and the delineations of the different groups up there correct?
What I have from my sources is that he was really involved in the secret space program, and his descriptions of what he saw in the secret space program is very correct of what was happening, let's say, 10 years ago. So there were actually different factions of the secret space program, but this is an arbitrary division because those factions merge into one another. For example, the so-called corporate faction is connected with Solar Warden because the same people controlled both from the top, the Unholy Four, and many people were recruited in both secret space programs without knowing the true objective from the top. And of course, there were many positive cells that were infiltrated in both secret space programs from the start. Actually, the resistance movement has managed, even before it was officially the resistance movement in the 70s, when it was called the organization, has infiltrated a cell into the Solar Warden program back in 1976, 1977. I would say that most of his description of life on the vessels and the bases that were on Mars is quite accurate. Actually, he released some details that he could not possibly find anywhere on the internet, and they're absolutely correct, because I have also received them from my sources, let's say 15 years ago. And actually, when I read his article, just memories came out from little details that I knew 15 years ago and I just forgot. So it was a very good synchronicity. I could not receive confirmation of his recent conference, his Oxford conference, and I would be very happy if he could provide more confirmation, more solid proof about that. But I would say that generally his information is very solid, and he's actually awakening many people to the reality that there were secret space programs, there was much going on, and the situation is quite much more complex than most people have imagined until recently. If people are confused because some of my intel is different from his, I would simply say that the situation on this planet in the solar system is very complex and nobody sees the whole picture. Altogether, all of us can create a whole picture.
I think that's really true. I think at some point here, obviously after the event, the whole picture will be presented to us in a much clearer fashion. Would you be able to confirm, he talked about the southern space colony there where the people think that the Earth has been destroyed by nuclear war. Can you confirm the existence of that base or that type of situation on Mars? What is going on Mars? Is it still contain bases from the ICC or the negative secret space program or negative extraterrestrial?
I can confirm there were many bases like this. And yes, it is true that people were cut off from information from Earth. And yes, they were told that Earth's population has been destroyed in nuclear war. That is completely true. According to my information, those bases have been liberated and cleared. What is remaining are very special secret space program bases that are connected with the Chimera group, and only those are still remaining. There are not many of them, but those there are connected with strange lead bombs and are not so easy to clear.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. It seems another thing some people have asked about and talked about in relationship to other planets is obviously not all planets contain oxygen. I've been told that by Howard Venture, who was on the moon in the, I think it was late 50s and early 60s, or maybe mid 50s, he maintained that it's very hot. There is some oxygen. Apparently, we've had enough descriptions from Mars to hear that it's like at a very high altitude. It's kind of hot at the same time, very cold, with a high altitude factor kicking in. Can you talk to us a little bit about, I'm wondering about like the gas giant Jupiter. What is life on there? Is there a physical plane existence on Jupiter at all? Would there be any type of positive or negative physical bases on the planet Jupiter?
There are no bases on Jupiter because Jupiter doesn't have a solid surface. There are actually platforms and ships floating in the atmosphere, yes. And there is actually plasma life present in the high atmosphere of Jupiter, which is not exactly physical, but not also completely etheric. There are plasma life forms that are quite different from what we are experiencing here on this planet as we define life. And of course, there is etheric and astral life on Jupiter, and there is bacterial life inside of some of the Jupiter's moons. And of course, there are physical bases of the life forces on and especially below the surface of the four major Jupiter satellites, the Galilean satellites.
Very good, thank you. That corresponds to what Dr. Fred Bell talked about to me privately, that there's life, there's spurious life there. It's a different type of consciousness. He also mentioned that there is a life on the mental plane there, but I appreciate that.
Yes, of course.
I kind of cut you off there. I didn't realize you were going to say something else. Do you have anything else to say about Jupiter?
I just wanted to add that on Io, which has quite a lot of volcanic activity, life is of a little bit different form. You have a certain bacteria that can thrive in high temperature in sulfur-rich environment. And actually, if scientists would send a probe there, they would find it.
Okay. I would like to know also, can you talk about Saturn has been called the law of karma or Satan or the opposer. It's a large planet. And in astrology, it has a lot of influence, and I want to talk about that in a little bit too. But can you talk about what type of life is on Saturn?
It is quite similar because all the gas giants have plasma life forms, because gas giants have the right environment for those plasma life forms to form. Plasma life forms are like big bubbles, big clouds of plasma, and they need a lot of electric discharge that is formed in the atmospheres of gas giants to survive. And of course, some of the Saturn moons have conditions to form life, bacterial life. Enceladus has a subsurface ocean, and that ocean has, in certain depths, the right conditions to form bacterial life. And of course, there are bases on various moons of Saturn. There are bases of the light forces. And unfortunately, there are certain locations I will not mention in the Saturn system that still hold some Chimera strongholds, some implant stations.
Okay, thank you. And some of the original spiritual contact of the extraterrestrials from the solar system back in the 50s, there are many different groups, which I feel were credible, which referred to a Saturn tribunal. Is there a higher dimensional confederation presence on Saturn, or were these spoken about on the moon? If you know anything, I'm talking about the Saturn tribunals. And
yes,
thank you.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Actually, the Galactic Confederation has presence in all major bodies and around all major bodies in the solar system, including Saturn.
Okay, and this is a physical presence?
Physical and non-physical both.
Okay, well, I guess I wanted to go a little bit into some other people's questions here. We're about halfway in with my personal queries here, and we'll come back to some of those. Another thing that's very important to me, I had mentioned this before in our previous interview, and when you had mentioned that there were some reptilians and some holographic clones, when I heard about this going on, was kind of away from the internet, but when I finally got to it, I absolutely got an immediate download that there are chimera, there is some stuff taking place there as far as some negative forces moving in. I was wondering, with this condition here, with the Syrian situation in Europe, it seems to be that the cabal has kind of clamped down, made things a bit worse for the people. This could be used as an opportunity for humanity to come together and to support these, for the most part, 99.9% innocent people that have fled their lives. It just breaks my heart. Women and children walking for weeks because they're not terrorists, because they're fleeing war, because they're fleeing cabal conscription and being killed and fleeing for their lives. And they're being seen as people who are coming to take from these foreigners, from their financial system, from the societal infrastructure. And yes, it would put a burden on people, but this is really this challenge. Would you agree with me that it's an opportunity for humanity to come together in compassion to heal this situation? And if so, what do you recommend besides meditation for some suggestions that world leaders might take from this interview to help ease this humanitarian crisis that the world now faces, we as a planet, as a people, or our brothers and sisters from Syria?
The answer depends on who you're addressing, because if you're addressing world leaders, they are quite much aware that what is the cause of the situation, and they could resolve this very easily if they wanted to. They have enough of intel, they have enough of understanding of situation in Syria that it could be easily resolved. On a human level, of course, the vast majority of those people are people who have been put in a certain situation and they need assistance and support. Some of them are war refugees and some of them are economic migrants, but nevertheless, those people need assistance. And there is a certain process of balancing necessary so that all parts of the equation are supported, people who are fleeing the countries and people who are receiving those refugees. So there needs to be a balance, a dialogue, and because there are always two sides of the coin. Some of those people have been bribed to come to Europe. Some of those people are not behaving nicely. So all this needs to be taken into consideration, and meditation, as we have, helps to resolve those tensions so people react more calmly when there is tension which escalates. Russia is taking some steps.
Cobra, my question to you is, you mentioned that the global currency reset is a bit of a misdirection, is really not that important to the global financial meltdown. Corey Goody T, not to bring him up too much here, but he also had recently stated that he felt that one of the prime bombs on humanity to really shock us into change, which he suggested that one of the big tumbling aspects of the financial system would be a breakdown in the economic system for us to realize that it's a Ponzi scheme and that we've been had and manipulated by a central banking system, which was a big part of me coming on board with you and understanding the event, because I thought, what a brilliant move, how to get people's attention, but through the financial system. And since the financial system is the main blood flow of the dark force, it's always made sense for me that this take place. Of course, all of us around the world are struggling, especially the light workers, especially those innocent people. I gave $20 the other day to a mother with a child sitting on the street with a sign. I really felt bad. This was not a drug addict. This was not someone who's taking advantage of the system. I could tell this was a desperate mother, the look in her eye. These types of things are increasing all over the planet, and the financial system really needs to be healed. Can you give us, again, for those people who ask so many questions financially every month and worry about their personal situation, could you give us a little bit of positive hope about the progress of the light forces and what is intended for this new financial system?
I've said this many times. After the reset of the financial system, people will receive a part of the money from the global collateral account because this money belongs to the people. They will receive some funds directly. They will receive funds as investment in the infrastructure, and the whole situation will be much, much, much better after the event. Before the event, I am not expecting any great improvement and there will be turbulences in the markets, but the actual financial reset will be a very sudden event that will happen exactly at the moment of the event itself.
Thank you very much for that. Also, I personally, from my perspective, really, because of the issue is so confusing with these data dumps that will take place at the time of the disclosure and the event, post-event, through the media, can you tell us, does the resistance movement have a very clear, detailed educational program for people to understand past economic system, what brought it to this position, and what is expected for us and how to relate to the new financial system as it takes place? I realize that this cannot be shared completely because the cabal would know the game, but they do have plans in relationship to this. Is that correct?
Yes, of course, educational materials are ready to be released at the time of the event and afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Of course, we have the age-old question that generally comes up. Can you talk about the etheric and the lower astral realms in relationship to the Chimera? Is there ongoing clearing taking place on the Earth? Are we still in quite an accelerated rate of clearing there?
Yes, there is still clearing going on. The vast majority of entities have been removed from the lower astral and the etheric. On the plasma plane, there is still work to do, but there is progress being made daily.
Okay, I've been watching a tremendous amount of videos in regards to, of course, the weather. This has been an unprecedented month for weather as far as global flooding in Spain, Argentina, Utah, Europe, all over the world, tremendous amounts of flooding. I'm kind of curious if you could talk a little bit about what percentage is a result of the natural changing of the vibrations of the planet and the purification of the elementals, and this being a necessary aspect of the Earth's cleansing, and what part of this is definitely cabal related. If you could talk about that percentage in any particular areas in regards to the cabal influence in the weather.
The vast majority is the result of the response of nature to the increased influx from the galactic center. And actually, without the assistance of the Galactic Confederation, we would have drastic cataclysms already. So we are in a buffer zone. The galactic forces are assisting us to keep the planet stable. And after the event, the weather situations will begin to calm down because the consciousness on the planet will rise, and this will allow the forces of nature, the etheric beings, to deal with these galactic energies more harmoniously. I would say that the mass consciousness of humanity does influence weather, not just the cabal, but the combined fears and projections of humanity do influence weather, not just weather technology of the cabal.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I felt the same thing, that this type of thing is coming. I'll ask you, did you see the pictures taken at the my summer conference and the closing ceremonies? It shows literally almost a blue purplish sphere with some dots inside the center of the sphere. Did you see those yet?
No.
Okay. Well, I'll get them to you for our next interview. I'm kind of curious if you would be able to comment on those. Let's get back to some of our people's questions here.
Okay.
Someone wants to know about astrology becoming redundant. Was it a false contract to keep us imprisoned in the third dimension? According to Dr. Bell, the stars impel, they don't compel, and it's basically the science of the magnetic influence, the planets on the human biology affecting our hormones and our endocrine glands and chakras, and that if we are completely enlightened and attuned to source, the astrology has no effect. Fred said a man makes his own destiny. He said for the average person enmeshed in a human life, that the planets certainly do have effects and can affect our feelings and consciousness. Can you talk about astrology and its validity or redundancy at this point in time?
Okay, basically I've already answered this question, but I would like to add that astrology on a planetary scale can be a very useful tool that we can use to further the planetary liberation process, because planets do have energy fields, and those energy fields create interference patterns, and those interference patterns influence the planetary situation quite much. And if we ride with the wave of those interference patterns, we can improve the situation, we can speed up the process towards the event.
Okay, thank you. Someone has a question here, and I'm not really testing you, but it's a good question. I kind of thought it was interesting. It says if there were lots, I don't know how many billion you said souls trapped inside the veil 26,000 years ago, and you say the archons control souls which incarnated, why didn't they just prevent the 144,000 souls orders of the star that came, what it was at about 12,000 years ago from the Sirius group? You understand the question?
Yes, the Archons do not have total control on the incarnation cycle. They have maybe, I would say, 80% of control, because if they would have total control, there would be no way to escape the Matrix, and there would be no way to liberate the planet.
That answers that quick and easy. You mentioned that there, of course, is the ascending and descending aspect of soul. Souls that start, as Omnic mentions, from raw primordial soup and evolves upwards into human consciousness. And then, of course, we have a higher type of soul consciousness that is coming down into things. How can we tell the difference of which person is which type of soul?
Souls that have descended from higher realms will have a certain memory of that connection, which is quite natural for them. And those souls who have evolved from the matter do not have that memory. For them, it is actually climbing out the mountain for the first time.
Okay. You said that, I'm not sure if it's this last one or the one before, you said that the darkness of the primary anomaly has no use to us whatsoever. So this whole experience with darkness has no benefit to us whatsoever, no benefits at all. Is Cobra saying we could have experienced it without directly experiencing it? The question is I guess, the random anomaly has really no use. Would it have been possible for us to just know about it without experiencing it?
It is not possible to resolve the primary anomaly without direct experience, because you cannot understand something you have not experienced.
Okay. The other question here I thought was kind of interesting is, why are the human race so important in terms of prophecies and ascension-related models of the universe as a whole? Are there other races that need our help in order to advance evolution as a whole?
It is not the human race that has such importance. It is more of that this planet is so important because it is the last stronghold of the dark forces, and when this planet is liberated, the war is over.
Okay, there's lots of talk, in different aspects, even within the beneficial, positive spiritual ET contacts that we get, that there seems to be some type of harvesting. Could you kind of explain that? Is that not a proper term? Does this mean a lot of different groups are going to go back to where they came from? What is the term harvest? Is that strictly part of the Archon reptilian network description? Can you talk about harvest?
Some channeling sources use that term to describe ascension, and the other sources use that term to describe stealing of the soul energy by the Archon. So it's a loaded term, I would say.
Okay, that's a good way, I guess. Well, actually, I want to ask this other one first. I think it's more important. We're getting close to the end of our time here. The question is, what is the situation with politics and space and other beings? Is there peace and unity within every race? Source would have an easier time connecting with beings that aren't on Earth. So I'm thinking that the rest of the universe is pretty well balanced. Is that correct?
Okay, the rest of the universe lives in peace and harmony simply because beings in the universe are reflections of the sea of universal love. That connection was cut artificially with implants in this sector of the universe millions of years ago, and the last remnant of that sector is planet Earth, and to a very small extent the solar system.
Okay, I guess I'm going to ask one last question here. I guess I'm going to bring it back down to Earth, so to speak. Could you talk a little bit about what is going on right now with this Iran nuclear deal? I know it's just a political cover, but they seem to be kind of pumping it up and misdirecting it. Do you see, is that just a complete cabal misdirection, this Iran nuclear deal, just more fear porn?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I guess I do have one more question I wanted to get into. I guess that's going to be in regards to this, of course, we're coming very close here. Allegedly tomorrow, the 28th, things are going to change. Someone posted in Cobra Etheric Liberation, one of my favorite direct voice channels or communicators. I don't really, like you, I'm really tough on channels. I'll grill them like a murder suspect. But cosmic awareness, I was reading this. There have been 3 different human instruments for this same source of information, and I found it to be extremely accurate for the most part. I was reading information from Cosmic Awareness in regards to clones in 1979 and reptilians. It was quite dangerous for the channel at the time, whose name was Paul Shockley. I forget who number 2 was, but number 3, Cosmic Awareness, just came out and said that this time will see mostly a ramp up of the cabal's unveiling of their true New World Order plan, that the Pope's visit is to appear to be benevolent, to bring us all together. In reality, it's a kind of a New World Order plot. They may bring up carbon taxes and our responsibility and imposing this type of, elitist martial law where only the rich can afford to use high technology that pollutes, and they'll put a scale on it. We know it won't be successful, but this awareness indicated that this uptick in the vibrational window is going to be more of a, let's call it a cabal-related exposure of their program. Would you agree with that?
Okay, whatever will happen in the next few days will not have a drastic impact on the planetary situation. So whatever speeches are being made, whatever those situations are, they are temporary and they will not change the destiny of this planet.
Well, thank you very much, Cobra. That's a good ending note. I'm really confident as well. I do feel that things are going to get a little bit worse on our tectonic plate movement. I know the galactics are here preventing wholesale destruction, as you mentioned many times, but I think that if we can literally weather the storm and raise our vibrations, we're going to make it a lot easier. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, Cobra. Do you have any final messages for our people, any words of hope or upcoming information that they can look forward to in regards to the victory of the light?
Yes, actually, I will put it this way. The last days of September are going to be quite intense energetically, and I would ask everybody, do not get provoked, stay in your center, and after all those thought forms of drastic cataclysms and asteroids and New World Order are collapsing because nothing will happen, this will make room for a fresh start, and I will release quite much intel after the end of this month.
Well, that's very exciting, Cobra. Thank you so much again. I'm sorry for some of the technical issues here, Ricky, and for everyone else. It gets a little jumpy here. And victory to the light. It's been a pleasure, and we'll do it again next month. Thank you so much, Cobra.
Thank you, victory of the light.